Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So this video is my DDO raid prep guide. So this is going to go over what you need to start raiding in DDO in 2023. So this video is all about gear that every character needs. This is gear that you need to combat specific raid mechanics. This video is not going over, what's the best gear in the game to min-max your particular build. This is stuff that you need for specific raid mechanics. That's what we're talking about. This list is as exhaustive as I could make it. If I miss something you feel is super important, please go, list it below. I'm not going to list every single little thing. That would be nice to have. This is more like the mandatory stuff is what we're going over here. And I will have another section going over some other things you might want, but really what this video is focused on is stuff you gotta have to raid, okay? Also, this video is focused on your typical difficulty. So currently with in-game legendary raids in DDO in 2023, we are talking about legendary hard and some legendary R1s, maybe with some even older ones. You can go a little higher than R1 in your typical pug or typical average guild run. But that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about requirements for high skull raids. If you're in an amazing, guild like Lava Divers or something who's running high skull legendary raids, obviously the requirements for that are going to be a lot different than your typical difficulties run by the normal, everyday population. So we are not talking about that. So this is just your kind of normal difficulties that you're going to find jumping into most pugs or most normal average guild runs. Okay. All right, so let's start with stuff you gotta have for raiding. So first thing I would list is some kind of electrical absorption item, some kind of source for electrical absorb. So there are many raids in DDO where you need electric absorb. I would say it's definitely the most important overall of all the absorption elements you're going to want to have. So electric absorption, there's a lot of good sources for this that are easy to farm. One very popular one is the Legendary Ring of Flickering Steel. You can get that from the Lost at Sea quest, which is a free-to-play quest, by the way. It's not a hard farm. It's like a 5-minute quest. So you can farm that for one. You can also get something like the Legendary Spark Souls. Also not too bad of a farm. That one comes from Saltmarsh. Or if you just want to get some kind of random loot gen electrical absorb, that can serve the purpose here. I mean, it won't be quite as good, but it'll work in a pinch. So just have some kind of electrical absorption. Why do you need electrical absorption? There are many raids where there's a lot of electrical damage. So the most notable one is riding the storm out. Riding the storm out, literally you get hit with electrical damage the entire raid from almost the entire raid from an electric damage over time effect. And if you don't have some kind of electrical absorption in that raid, unless you have a lot of hit points, a lot of MRR, you're probably going to just be dead and be a soul stone the entire time. So that one's super important to have for riding the storm out. You got to have that if you want to run that raid. There's other situations, some notable ones. Legendary Master Artificer at the end, there's the electric floor where you'll take a lot of electric damage, so electric absorb helps there. Killing time, there's a lot of electrical damage you take there. Fall of Truth, you got the boom. There's electrical damage there. Vision of Destruction, circles, electrical damage. So there's other examples as well. Those are just some of them. But electrical absorption, really important, so get some kind of source of that. The next thing I'd list is a fire absorption item, or fire shield, whether that's through the spell or a scroll or some item with fire shield on it. So here's some good examples of fire absorption or fire shield items that you can get, but you most notably need this for Too Hot to Handle because you're basically taking fire damage the entire raid. There's even a fire damage over time effect that can happen if you're too slow with the puzzles in that raid. So some source of fire absorption is good. Also, there's other raids where you take fire damage, like Fire on Thunder Peak's a good example, but there's other raids, but just have some kind of fire absorption's really nice. Okay, next is Curse Potions, or a Heart of Sulamati's trinket, which, if you don't know what that trinket is, a trinket from, it's actually an artifact, but it's a trinket from Vision of Destruction. So that makes you immune to curses, but you need that or Curse Potions. Curse Potions, though, obviously many sources of those. Just buy them in game for platinum. They're very cheap. There's actually a vendor right next to a Vision of Destruction in the marketplace, so you can buy them. But you need Curse Potions for many situations, but most notably it's for Vision of Destruction because you'll get hit with curses constantly through that raid. So you need at least, I would say at least like 20 Curse Potions, depending on difficulty. But you need, just carry a stack of Curse Potions, because if you're gonna get 20, you may as well buy 100, a full stack. They're very cheap. Also, Curse of Strahd, there is the shadows in that raid. They will hit you with a HP debuff that you can clear with Curse Potions. So those are the two most notable ones, but yeah, just have a stack of Curse Potions at all times. The next item I would talk about is some source of leap. So abundant step. Like the most notable way to get this is the Caneth Boots Propulsion. You can get these from the Schemes of the Enemy quest in the House Caneth Secrets of the Artificer's Adventure Pack. It's an easy farm. It's not that hard to get. So go run that quest a few times. You'll get your boots. But what these boots do is they give you that clicky to shoot you forward in the air a great distance. So that's most notably important in Temple of the Deathworm, the jump room. You can do it without this, but it's a lot easier with a Caneth Boots Propulsion or Leap of Faith. Obviously, you don't have to get the Caneth Boots if you are playing a class like Favorite Soul, for example, or some other class that has a leap ability within it, or if you're using the Exalted Angel Destiny, that also has a leap ability. So just give some source of that. I will say, though, the Caneth Boots you might even want to have on, say, a Favorite Soul, just because they can also double. They have Featherfall on them, so you need Featherfall as well. So they have Featherfall on them, and they have stacking jump. They have enhanced jump on them. So it's just an amazing item that you want to try to get. I usually try to get that on every character, so I highly recommend that. There's other uses, though, for Leap, not just the Temple Deathworm jump room. I would also point out the Heroic Abbot, the tile room. It's nice to have because you can get like 2/3 of the way through the tile room, then use the Caneth Boots to shoot yourself forward the rest of the way. There's also situations like Skeletons in the Closet where you can use it to quickly get to a platform when a roar is about to happen. So it's useful in that rate as well. The next things I would list is some type of jump item or the jump spell, some way to get 40 jump if you don't have it already. So like Deathworm Jump Room is the most notable situation where you really need max jump. You can sometimes get this from a party member, but you need to be able to supply yourself with that in a pinch. The next thing I would note is a thrower, some kind of throwing item if you're not playing a ranged character. So if you're a melee, have a thrower around. Why? There's a few situations. I would say the most notable one, Von 5, the ranged lever. You want to be able to hit that if necessary to fill that role. There's also a lot of situations where you can't deal melee damage. So like in Demon Queen, for example, you have something to throw at Laylat. Obviously, if you're on a melee and using a thrower, you're not going to have amazing damage from a thrower, obviously, but it's nice to be able to contribute in these situations, like to hit Laylat and Demon Queen. Master Artificer at the end to hit Tovin after shield drops. You can't hit, you need some kind of range, so if you have a thrower, something you can throw at him. That's nice. It's also nice to hit the pipes in that raid. What else? Lord of Blades, the tops of the pillars. Very nice to have in that raid. So yeah, just have a thrower. It's the best thrower you can get. There's a bunch of in-game ones that do pretty good damage. I personally use the thrower from the Snow Peaks Festival, the challenge course, the one you get there. That's what I use, but there's a bunch of good ones available. I mostly use that one because I like the animation. I think it's fun, but there's a bunch of good ones you can get at in-game. The next thing I'd note is Featherfall. So we kind of mentioned this with the Caneth Boots Propulsion because they include Featherfall, but some kind of source of Featherfall, whether that's an item or an augment or the spell. But you need that particularly in killing time. You need Featherfall to go from island to island. And yes, you can maybe get this from someone with the spell, but you don't always have that available. So I wouldn't rely on a party member to give you Featherfall. Have it. It's really easy to get. Have it through an item or an augment. And again, you need Featherfall, again, for the Deathworm Jump Room. Death Block. So Death Block, this is the basic one you should have equipped pretty much on all characters at all times, unless you're undead or something, or you're otherwise, immune to that stuff. But you can get Death Block in many sources, many random loot gen items or named items. You can buy an augment. Just have some sort of Death Block. I mean, there's raids like Deathworm where Death Ward is not sufficient. You'll get that. You'll actually get that stripped by Aglarasa in that raid. So you got to have Death Block. The next thing I'd note is some source of restoration to clear stat damage. You can't just rely on healer all the time. So restoration potions like Lesser Restore Pots to clear stat damage at least. Have a stack of those, or the spell. Just some source of that. There's also clicky. The next thing I'd note is if you're going to join in-game raids, you want to try to be level 28 at least. And I mention this because there's actually 2 in-game raids that are level gated. So riding the Storm out requires you to be level 27. You cannot enter. The game won't let you into the raid, which it's silly. I don't know why they did that, but the game won't even let you enter the raid if you're not level 27 at least. And Killing Time, the same thing, except you got to be level 28. So if you want to jump into raids for the first time, try to be at least level 28 just so you can enter any raid. The next thing I will list, and I think this is a requirement, so others will disagree, and I know there are still some groups that still use in-game voice chat, but I think it's a requirement in 2023, which is Discord. So this is an application. Install the Discord application. Many pugs, and I would say most guilds at this point, use Discord for voice chat. So the reason is because in-game voice chat in DDO is pretty terrible. The quality is poor. There's bugs. They still have a fail to connect chat bug. So most people, because of how poor the in-game chat is, will use Discord. Even if you don't want to talk, I'm not saying you don't have to talk in Discord, but having some way, at least being able to jump into Discord to hear the raid leader is really, really important. A lot of times if you join a public group, they'll drop a Discord link and want you to join. Specifically, if you don't know the raids very well, you should be able to at least hop in to hear the raid leader. So there's a lot of situations where voice chat's important in raids, like the Strahd card room, very important. Calling out roars and skeleton, very important. So there's just a lot of situations where it's way more advantageous to call things out through voice chat than to try to type everything. Like another example is Strahd, if you get gripped. I mean, there's a lot of situations where voice chat is really important. So again, you don't have to talk. There's very few raid leaders I think they'll require you to talk. But if you can at least jump into Discord, have it installed so you can jump in when required so you can hear the raid leader. I mean, obviously, like I know myself, if I'm leading raids, which I do lead, by the way, 3 p.m. on Thelanis, 3 p.m. Eastern on Thelanis every Saturday, I lead raids. I do kind of throw out invites, and I like people to join so they can actually hear me. I think that if you have some kind of hearing disability or some rare situation like that where you can't hear, I mean, obviously let me know, let what the other raid leader know. Obviously, we can, work around the situation. Let's see. What else we want to talk about? I think that's it as far as like required things, but I think that's a pretty solid list of at least like the minimum requirements to start raiding. So now I'm going to go over some things that I think are nice to have, but not required. So some way to raise, I would list any character. So whether that's through a green steel clicky, scrolls, the spell, whatever you have, it's really useful and really helpful to be able to raise. A lot of times the healer may be dead. You need to raise the healer, or you're just trying to save a wipe. And if you can have a few different sources, or at least one source of raise dead or resurrection, it's very, very helpful. Even better, if you can get a Gibber's Blade to be able to self-raise, because you can use the Gibber's Blade in raids, that's even better. The next thing I would mention is cold absorption. I don't think cold absorption is required like fire absorb and electric absorb is, mainly because those two elements are so important to have absorb for in riding the storm out and 2 out to handle. But cold absorption is helpful, specifically in Hunter Be Hunted, the maze. You will take a cold damage over time effect. Kind of depends on your character. The damage over time isn't that bad if you're running just on like normal or hard. So it's not as essential, but it's very nice to have. So here's some different sources of cold absorption, but there's many different sources of cold absorption in the game. The next thing I would mention is the stone shoes from Sharn. So the legendary stone shoes, the stone shoes are very heavy, by the way. So if you have a low strength, you might have an encumbrance problem, but the stone shoes are good because they prevent you from getting blown off of the top of Tempest's spine. So it's a very nice item to have for that reason. Just for that raid specifically is the only raid you need it. The next thing I would mention is the boots of anchoring or the banhammer. You don't it's not really, this is not that important, but I put it on the list. So this boots of anchoring used to be really important in Tower of Despair raid because the end boss there could banish you, and the boots of anchoring made you immune to banishment. These days, very few people run Tower of Despair, and if you do run it, with power creep over the last 10 plus years, it's very unlikely you're going to fail your will save to get banished, but you still could technically if you run that raid and you have a really low will save on your character, or if you just roll a 1 and you don't have some kind of ability to auto save on a 1, you can still get banished. But he doesn't cast it that much, but I thought I would just add it on the list for that reason. Next thing I want to mention is petrification immunity. So there are a few raids where petrification immunity is nice because you can get frozen with petrification. So that's Mark of Death and Heroic Abbot. There's the most notable way probably to get this is the Soulforge augment through the Firelord of the Just ultimatum shield. You can turn that into an augment. So that's one thing I wanted to list here. Another thing that's nice but not required is the Ring of Spell Storing. So the epic and or the legendary Ring of Spell Storing. So the legendary Ring of Spell Storing gives you 5 charges and the epic gives you 3, and you can have 1 of each, by the way. So you can have up to 8 charges, but it basically works as a rejuvenating spell point potion. So they give you tons of spell points back if you're on anyone that uses spell points at all. This is just a great item to farm. It's not that bad of a farm. You need to farm the Sands Wilderness area for a while for bronze tokens, but it's not too hard to get anymore. Just a few years ago, they made this farmable for those bronze tokens, so you don't have to find it in the wilderness area anymore. You can just purchase it from the vendor there in the sands. And here, I'll link a video below, by the way, which explains how to farm all this and gives some more details. But I'll link that below in the description if you want some more details on farming out a Ring of Spell Storing or any other Desert Sands items. The next thing I'd list is some sort of self-healing. So while obviously you can't be expected to self-heal all the time in a raid, particularly if you're, running a class that doesn't have great self-heals, but some kind of self-healing is important. You should be able to keep yourself alive for a while if the healer goes down, or if you just happen to be in a group without really any main healer or any actual healing focus build in it, which does happen in pugs. So there are going to be situations where you're going to be expected to heal yourself. So have something, whether that's rejuvenation cocoon or renewal or just something, some way to keep yourself alive for just a little while. The next thing I mentioned is the spell absorption items. So there's a lot of good sources of this. I mean, probably the most notable one that I would list is the 2-headed platinum piece from Saltmarsh. But some sort of spell absorption is nice in many situations. What else we want to mention? Shield, Night Shield, we're getting kind of general things, but there are situations where you need to be immune to magic missiles, so some sort of shield or Night Shield source, like there are shield clickies you can farm as far back as Korthos. You can get a shield clicky, so get some sort of source of shield. Intercession Ward is nice, so there are a few different items for this. So intercession, if you are a divine spellcaster, it's nice to be immune to that. So you have to face intercession, most notably in Mark of Death and Heroic Abbot. Other things I'd mention: blindness immunity, fear immunity. You can get these via augments or items or enhancements, various enhancements. The next thing I'd note is, if applicable for your character, some source of true seeing and ghost touch. So there's many enemies in raids with concealment or incorporality, and you need to be able to bypass this. If you don't have, for example, if you don't have true seeing, and a lot of the times you can get the mass true seeing spell from a cleric or something, but if you don't have any source of true seeing, or if you die and you lose the buff that someone else cast on you, I mean, your DPS can get cut into as much as half if you don't have any source of true seeing. So if you're on some sort of melee especially, or just some character that needs it, you're going to want to have it on an item. It's really, really important. Next thing I'd mention here is nice to have but not required is Bigsby's Hands. So there's 2 raids in particular where they're nice, which is Deathworm and Strahd. So Strahd, the card room, to mark if you find a card. It's nice to mark it with a Bigsby's Hand. So if you don't know what a Bigsby's Hand is it basically makes a column of light and a big X on the map when you use one. These are nice to have. You can buy them from the DDO store, but they're also you can usually find them for really cheap on the auction house or the Shard Exchange. The other thing that they're nice for is Temple of Deathworm, to mark which of when you get to the sections where you choose one of 3 different possible paths. It's nice to have someone with one of those available to mark which portal the group went through. So if someone has to detour or gets caught behind, they know where to go. Another thing I'd mention is some sort of chaos absorption item. This is for skeletons mostly, for the Kopru, but it's nice to have. Also just nice to have when playing Isle of Dread in general. Next thing I'd mention is negative absorption. Many different places in raids where it's nice to have negative absorption. Freedom of movement, also helpful in many raids. So guys, I think that's about it. I mean, the other tips I'd say for raiding, just listen to the raid leader, follow instructions, basic stuff. Don't talk to any NPCs if you're not familiar with the raid. That's really important. Don't pick up any items in raids if you're not familiar with the raid. There are certain raids that can just fail if you if someone picks up an item and isn't aware of it. So most notably, Hound of Zoriat, if you pick up the gems to charm the puppies and you aren't aware of what's going on, I mean, the raid can fail because you can't charm the puppies. Another one is Von 5. If someone picks up the voice, for example, and doesn't realize it, the raid cannot be completed because you have to have that item to complete. So don't pick up any items. Don't talk to any NPCs. There's situations like, for example, talking to Esmeralda before the card room and Strahd initiates that phase, so you can wipe the raid if you talk to an NPC in that situation. Also, Hunter be Hunted. You have to talk to the NPC to both, one, select the optionals. So if you talk to an NPC, you can push the party straight into the infight, which you don't want to do. You also talk to an NPC to not just select whether to do the optionals, but also to start the infight. So those are a couple examples where you don't want to talk to NPCs. You don't want to pick up items. Don't get ahead of the raid leader. Be aware of what's going on. I mean, there's certain raids, a lot of raids, as long as you know the raid, you don't have to communicate too much, but you need to know the raids before you get to that level. So, I mean, there's certainly raids like Baba's Hut, for example, where if you don't know what you're doing, you can screw up the whole raid by dragging the big scarecrows over the puzzles to the point where they're not solvable if you're continuously doing that. So just listen to the raid leader. Make sure you don't pick up any items. Don't talk to NPCs. Make sure you're following instructions. Don't go past the raid leader either. Don't zerg. These are just all general tips for raiding. But I think I went over all the main essential things. So yeah, guys, if there's anything else that I missed or you think should be added here, definitely when it comes to mandatory things, comment below. If there is anything I want to add, I'll add a pinned comment below in the YouTube comments following up on this video. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.